Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. It's Lucci Del-Gaudio, and I've got a brilliant podcast today on It's All Jiu-Jitsu. But before I introduce my guest, I'm just gonna first of all apologize to everybody. I've not been on. I've been on a family holiday, and we've been doing work in the house and more work and all this and that, and organizing our events as well, guys. But if you can remember, last year we launched, we started to look at a book. It's All Jiu-Jitsu book, the Jiu-Jitsu journals. Okay, so I'm gonna have some news for you in the next couple of weeks on that one. I'm also gonna have some news on the Japanese martial arts show and the Kaizen martial arts show. So let's crack it on. All right, let's crack it on. All the way from Florida and the US of A. I think yes, this guy's my first American podcaster, first American interview. I'm very keen to talk about this guy. His name is George Rego from Florida. He's Portuguese descent, but was born in the United States, and he's the head coach at the Jukido Jiu-Jitsu Academy in Florida. He holds a 5th degree black belt in Jiu-Jitsu and a 3rd dan in karate as well. George, welcome. Thanks for agreeing to come on, mate.
Lucci,
really great to hear from you, man.
The honor is truly mine. You know, when I first heard about your podcast, that I don't actually remember initially how I saw it, but I remember that the title caught my attention, not only because, you know, it had jujitsu in it, but, you know, it's all jujitsu. It really caught my attention. So I poked around a little bit, and before long I had watched quite a few episodes. So yeah, you know, and I've seen some absolutely stellar representatives of different jujitsu systems. So yeah, to be included on your podcast, and, you know, and be the first American, and you know, you've had kind of a pantheon of jiu-jitsu people on, so to be included is a true honor. So thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will quickly tell you for your American friends, and the title of it, It's All Jiu-Jitsu, actually came when I was a kid. Okay. When I started in the martial arts, I've got 6 older brothers, all at Dan grade, and obviously they did jiu-jitsu. When I started in the martial arts, my first martial art was karate, or Shotokan karate. My brothers ripped me to pieces all the time because I was doing karate, and all I got, it's all jiu-jitsu. It's all jiu-jitsu. What you're doing, it's jiu-jitsu, and that's like sort of stuck with me for ages and ages. Yeah. And if you look, if we look at Japanese arts, yes, you follow the Japanese arts, man, it's gonna lead back to jiu-jitsu, you know. So that's that's how we come up with the name. It's a good title. Before we talk about you and how you started in the arts and the jiu-jitsu in America, I want to talk about your book, what you've got out, what you've got out at the moment. Okay. The founder of the jiu-jitsu and judo in America.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Tell us. I cannot wait till I get the copy of this, man. Honestly, I really am looking forward to this. Okay. I'm a bit of what I love is to look at history. Yes. How things got there, how they developed, where it all started, etc., etc. And I'm very interested how it all started in the United States. How did the jiu-jitsu actually land in the United States? What inspired you to write the book in the first place, George? Tell us a little bit about your book, mate. I'm going to give you the mic.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So the book is The Founding of Jiu-Jitsu and Judo in America. And, you know, I was motivated to write the book, I think, for 2 main reasons. So without you know, I've been both a martial arts nerd and a history nerd my whole life. And so you put those 2 things together and I'm in my element, right? Yeah. And so as I've developed in the martial arts, I've always been, and I don't want this to come across as like, you know, look at me, you know, up here. It's not that in that spirit at all. But I've always been a little, frankly, a little disappointed often with how superficial some people's knowledge of basic elements of history are. So even if they're not a historian, you know, just the basics of how things developed. And more than that, Lucci, is not only do sometimes people not know, but then there are fabrications that are put out there, and they're just said so frequently and so often that people really do think that those, you know, that various myths and so forth are true. So for me, you know, I didn't want to write a book that was finger pointing and go, no, here's the facts, you've got it wrong. It's not in that spirit at all, but it's just a layout of the fundamentals, right? This is not written so that, you know, you're bored with history dates and 1901 this happened and 1902 this happened. It's history, but I tried to make it very readable. So it's like almost a story. And so that way, even if you're not a geeky martial arts history nerd like you or I, you can still get a good sense of, you know, how did this thing get going? Why, as you mentioned a moment ago, where did this come from? How did it develop? Why does it look the way it looks today? And so I wanted to give people an easily digestible history, something that they don't go 4 or 5 pages in and go, I got to put this down. I can't even read this. It's drudgery. I wanted it to be an enjoyable read that was informative and educational. And I think that the second piece for me too, if I'm being honest, is that I've had a growing concern that some of the pioneers of jiu-jitsu in America were, you know, that their names and faces were going to be lost to time. And it was important to me that some of the figures that were absolutely, the art could not have developed the way that it did without these people. That, you know, we have a duty to recognize those pioneers, you know, people like Paul Arel or Ernie Cates. They're like the Robert Clark of American jiu-jitsu.
I totally get that, man. Absolutely, totally get that. Yeah.
So for me, I wanted to kind of hit both of those. On the one hand, give people a solid sense of the history that was easily digestible, easy to read, enjoyable, but at the same time also pay tribute to because we stand on the shoulders of giants, and it's important that we know where we come from.
Yeah. I'm glad that someone in the States is doing that. We've got a really nice guy. He's a cracking martial artist, really intelligent as well. Simon Keegan. He brought out amazing. It's one of my favorite books, to be honest. The Bushido, the history of British Jiu-Jitsu.
I have that book on my bookshelf. Great book.
I think every Jiu-Jitsu instructor and teacher on the planet should have a copy. Like with your book as well, because you put in something out there what is so paramount and important, and you could see why I really wanted to speak to you. As soon as I found out about this book, I had to reach out to you straight away. I was like, I think you messaged me. And unfortunately, I was on holiday, and I was like, wow, I need to speak to I'm speaking to this guy. So it's incredible. And we got things like Zoom now, so we got it's just it's so simple to communicate now, so it's fantastic. So when did you launch your book then? Because it's fairly new, is it? It's fairly new.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
And the response has been Lucci, it's been more than I could have ever imagined,
So it's doing well. It is. We're gonna we're gonna put the links on, guys, so if you want to have a look at it for yourself, and I'm sure the UK, I'm sure the whole of Europe, and all our listeners, most of our majority of our listeners are going to grab this copy, mate. I'm absolutely, because if they're like me, they're going to be really interested in especially. You've added the judo bit to it as well. Was there a reason for that? At the end of the day, it is all jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, well, I think that's historically true, actually. Right. So I think that when jujitsu was brought to the United States initially, at that time, when the term judo was introduced, the terms jujitsu and judo at that time, and I am talking at that time, were essentially interchangeable. Were essentially interchangeable. And both of those terms were floating around. Eventually, as time went on, not just in the United States, but more broadly, but definitely in the United States, the term started to separate a little bit. But the truth is that there was a very porous, wall between those two worlds. And eventually, of course, for rightly or wrongly, judo got crystallized as a sport. Certainly in 1964, when it became an Olympic sport, with very few exceptions, there's a few traditionalist groups out there, but the overwhelming majority of the judo world went in the direction of sport. And so then the divide became much more crystal clear. But up until that point, certainly in the United States, for example, Teddy Roosevelt, our 26th president, a lot of people don't know, practiced jujitsu and actually turned the recreation room of the White House into a little dojo.
Oh, wow, man. No, yeah.
And Yamashita, who was one of the 4 guardians of the Kodokan, one of Jigoro Kano's 4 top students, came to the United States and was teaching him jujitsu in the White House, right? So it's an interesting thing, because what he was saying was that he was teaching jujitsu. Roosevelt refers to it as jujitsu, but yet he's the student of the founder of judo.
Okay.
You follow?
Okay. Yeah.
So it's there's little subtle or not so subtle historical clues that show in the beginning, judo was almost like Kano's vision for a higher level jujitsu. Jujitsu with a moral code and a philosophy.
Yeah.
And somewhere as the decades went on, even before Kano passed away, he started to express some reservations about the direction that judo was going, overly sport oriented, that it wasn't, sport and competition was no longer becoming one aspect of the art. It was becoming the totality of the art. And it was kind of losing its true kind of combative ethos. And so anyway, I think it's basically impossible to tell the story of one without the other, at least up until about 1960 or so. And then after that, you could make a much more, I could make post 1964 a book on jujitsu and one on judo. But up until that point, those histories are tied together like a braid.
Yeah, that's awesome. You explained that really, really, really well. Like I said, John, really, I'm looking forward to getting your book, and guys, and like our other guests, guys, who I'll read it and I'll let you know what it's about. And we'll probably do another podcast, George. We'll probably do another one, a follow-up, because I like to have my guests on at least 2 or 3 times. Things change.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, George, let's go right back to the beginning of your martial arts and how you got into the arts. And let's go back. 1991, I believe, was it you started? Is that
correct? Yeah. So I started. So I don't know how far back to go. So let me give you the brief overview. So as my parents would explain it, Lucci, ever since I could start walking and talking, I don't know why it is, but it is, I was pretty obsessed with anything combat related, whether it was martial arts movies, an army movie, professional wrestling on TV. If it was kind of mano-a-mano, little George was just kind of obsessed with this thing, right?
It's our Mediterranean blood, George.
Maybe it is, man. So anyway, as time went on, I'm talking a small boy. I started to kind of have this relentless campaign with my parents to let me do martial arts, let me get into a karate school. It was all karate back then for me. It was all martial arts. And the truth is that, my mother was a little hesitant to have this kind of little guy who was already pretty hyperactive and obsessed with combat. Now we're going to teach this little guy how to do it for real. She kind of had some hesitation, but I never really relented. And eventually my father kind of told her, listen, let the boy try it for a month or two. He'll get it out of his system.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can let him say he tried it. And
Yeah.
well, I'm still here. So, so I was fortunate enough. I was very fortunate to walk into the dojo of a man by the name of Paul Arel.
All right.
Paul Arel was a United States Marine, started training in the year 1950.
Yeah.
And he truly is one of the pioneers of jiu-jitsu in America. Not by himself. He's one of a cast of characters,
Yes.
but he's a central founding father of at least the post-World War II era of jiu-jitsu in America. And I was very fortunate to walk into his dojo. And I got to be honest with you, I don't know what my life would look like today had I not walked in, because really every facet of my life since the time I walked in as a 8-9-year-old boy, every facet of my life has been dominated by his teaching, his style of jiu-jitsu as a whole, and kind of this whole martial arts world.
That's awesome, man. So you started the karate. Was it you have a 3rd degree in karate?
Yeah, no, but I started with jiu-jitsu.
You started with the jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, no. Well, you got to understand. For me as a kid, it was just Karate Kid movies.
I get that, man.
Yeah, so I didn't know the difference.
Yeah, was karate just like some on the side for you to do because you was just?
No, I picked it up later. I was probably a 3rd Q, like brown belt level in jiu-jitsu, and my sensei also taught a very combative style of karate as well.
Yeah.
And as I got a little older, in our system, those worlds kind of sometimes we come together. The jiu-jitsu guys are doing their thing, the karate guys are doing their thing, but there are times where everybody's working together. Yeah. And a little bit by osmosis, you start to pick it up, and then it became a little bit more formal later on. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love karate, but it's not a secret that jiu-jitsu is my first and always,
I can relate to that, mate, because I had a pretty, like most martial artists, their first art would be karate.
Yes.
Especially our generation, Bruce Lee, your Karate Kid,
right.
Inspired movies and things like that. And you know what? You normally, a kid going into the martial arts would normally go to the nearest school in the town, village area they actually grew up in.
Yeah.
And for example, I was inspired by Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee did kung fu.
Right.
The first martial arts school I went to wasn't a kung fu school; it was a karate school.
Right.
There was a karate school, there was a judo school, and a boxing school. I went to all 3 because, like you, I enjoyed that combative kind of thing.
Yeah.
I liked it. And a kid with lots of energy. And you should,
interesting point you say, about joining schools that closest to home, which makes logical sense, right?
Yeah.
My situation, although my dojo was pretty close to my home, truth be told, but I had I actually, as a boy, before I started martial arts training, I actually got a little obsessed with that school. It's almost like fate had this happen. So long story short, between my home and my godmother's home, and in my Portuguese culture, those relationships are very close. There was basically one major roadway to get from my house to my godmother's house. And my mother and my godmother were very close, and she would go there frequently. In any case, on the way there was this old beat up yellow building. And occasionally when I was in the back seat of the car, I'd see them through the windows practicing martial arts, these big guys throwing each other around. And so for whatever reason, again, this is a young boy here. For whatever reason, not only did I want to practice martial arts, but I wanted to practice at that building. So when my parents started talking about it, there's this school there and that school there. Go, listen, there's nothing to discuss. It's that school I want to go to right there.
Exactly.
And it certainly was not the best looking place. It was not, it was an old up, beat up building. There were certainly nicer looking exteriors on many other schools, but I can't tell you why exactly, but for whatever reason, that's the dojo I wanted to go to. And It worked out that way.
Yeah. In the UK, we have like community centres and church halls.
Yes.
When we were kids, there were the dojos, and there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong learning. I learned from the very best, I think, in church halls and community centre halls.
Many of our associations schools are in church halls, recreation programs. Some of the best, some of the best teachers in the world are teaching out of, facilities like that. No doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic, man. Wow, man, we can go on all night, but let's get to now say, guys, we're gonna post all the links of George's book. It's been out for 2 weeks. It's selling really, really well. And so George, tell us, okay, your dojo, you got 5 instructors. I'm just going to chuck some random stuff at you now, mate, because I like to get you got 5 you can have 5 instructors.
Yes.
Coming to your dojo to do the ultimate seminar for you.
Oh boy.
Your fantasy seminar, dead or alive, dead or alive, doesn't matter. Who would the 5 instructors be there?
Dead or alive, huh?
Yeah, man. Anyone you like. Anyone you like.
That is a new question I have not had. Let me think here. So I would, off the top of my head, clearly biased, but I would have my teacher there who passed away in 2009. And I am biased, but I also think he deserves to be there. So that's one.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah.
Master Paul Arel.
Right.
I think I would have a gentleman by the name of Kawaishi. Kawaishi was a really, really prominent Japanese jujitsu sensei. He actually has become kind of known as the father of French judo and jujitsu.
Right.
And his book, My Method of Self-Defense, I still think today stands up, despite it being pencil drawings and all that. It is, if most judoka looked at that book, they'd go, this isn't judo. Like, this is old school jujitsu. And I think that his mentality, where he had a very martial approach to the art. I think that everything I've read about him, I think that he would, with my thinking about jujitsu, I think he should be there.
Yeah.
Maybe someone like Mifune, Kyuzo Mifune, known as the god of judo. I think I'd like him there. One of the early UK pioneers, actually, either Yuki Otani or Gunji Koizumi. I love their stuff as well. Boy, let's see who else.
There's too many. So I asked the question, man, and I guarantee you, after this interview, you go,
yeah, that's right.
Or someone will be watching it and going, why didn't you mention me?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. The historian in me can't help but think historically, right? But there's so much fantastic stuff, past and present, that there's just so much talent out there. But not to sound like a cheap plug for the book, but again, part of the effort was to make sure that some of these names aren't forgotten.
Well, rightly so.
Yeah.
Rightly so. Let's talk about, I know you got knowledge. Your UK, what do you know about the UK, the jiu-jitsu? Is anyone from over the pond inspired your journey? Or
actually, I told you this before we went live, and I don't mind sharing it. Despite the fact that I wrote a book on the founding of jiu-jitsu and judo in America, my favorite time period is actually when jiu-jitsu was introduced to the West in the UK, with characters like Yuki Otani, Yoi Nishi, a lot of the guys that you mentioned in the book Bushido. A lot of those characters are just to have a time machine and be a fly on the wall and just watch what was going on there. I'm fascinated with that era of jiu-jitsu, and really, the UK and the London area at that time with Bartitsu and all that, like that was that was a hotbed there. It was kind of the first hotbed outside of Japan.
Yeah. Tommy Joe. We got a guy called Tommy Joe Moore.
I'm very familiar with his work. I love his stuff.
I was just about to say, you need to get his book on Bartitsu.
Yes.
Yes, I'll link you guys together.
Beautiful.
Because that's what I like to do.
I enjoyed. I think he's been on your podcast once or twice. I did.
Oh, he's been on a couple of times, man. Yeah, I trained with him on last Sunday. I trained with him.
Did you?
Yeah, he did.
I say this to you in all honesty. I've caught a few of his YouTube videos where he's talking about the atemiwaza, the striking techniques of old jiu-jitsu, and making them, functional, and really he emphasizes how useful these old jiu-jitsu techniques are. And I got to tell you, for a guy with just himself and a camera and a dummy that he's hitting, he does a fantastic job. I'm a fan of his work.
Man. Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely, he's a good guy. He's done well for British martial arts, and
But he boxes too, right? He's boxing.
Yeah, man. Yeah. He's a boxer. Yeah. I'll get you guys all on together. So tell us a little bit about your dojo and what let's talk about. Let's touch on Jukido Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes.
Let's talk about that and the style of jiu-jitsu you do there over the States. I think people will be interested in that one. Yeah,
so the Jukido style of jiu-jitsu, despite the name sounding a little bit like Aikido, I assure you it's very much a jiu-jitsu system.
Absolutely.
And so it was developed by Paul Arel as kind of he started to use the name Jukido, I think, and I mean this in the best possible terms, not in kind of the hyper commercialized way, but I think as a way to brand his jiu-jitsu at a time where judo was very popular, but obviously was becoming very, very sport oriented, and he did not want to be affiliated with sport. His jiu-jitsu was always very street self-defense oriented. And of course it was a jiu-jitsu system, but a lot of the times, kind of like today, I don't know if this may be true in the UK, but certainly in the United States today, modern day, if you tell people you do jiu-jitsu, they think they know what you're talking about. A couple of guys just rolling on the floor, BJJ style, Brazilian jiu-jitsu style. And Jukido was kind of a way for him to have people ask the question, right? Before assuming what you're talking about. Oh, I know what you guys do. You're jiu-jitsu. Or I know what you guys do. You're judo guys, like those Olympic guys. Well, if someone go, well, what's Jukido? Well, that's exactly what he wanted. You got to ask a question. What is that? And that would allow him to give an explanation of what our jiu-jitsu is about, And, I always say that, not to get long-winded with this, Lucci, but I tell my students that our jiu-jitsu is based on two assumptions, two big assumptions. And if we keep those assumptions in mind, we're going to end up with the two main things that we need to keep our jiu-jitsu true, right? Yeah. So assumption number one that we make, and that Paul Arel made with his jiu-jitsu, was that number one, we're doing this for the real world. So although we train on the mats, the end product is not for the mats. It's for a real world environment. Yeah. Now, real world can be anything from a military context to a kid dealing with a bully on a playground. Yes. But the point is, it's a real world situation. Okay. Right. And assumption number two is that we're going to just assume, hopefully we're wrong, but we're going to train with the assumption that you are somehow outmatched in terms of size, strength. Maybe the person's bigger than you. Maybe they have a buddy or a weapon. But those are the two realities. Number one, they're bigger and stronger than you, let's say. They have some kind of physical attribute advantage. And number two, it's happening for the real world, right? And so if we buy these two assumptions, then I think we have two things that come out of that. Number one is that you have to have a very complete martial art. We don't have the luxury of saying, oh, well, we don't do strikes, or we don't do any groundwork, or we don't learn how to deal with a knife. You have to have a very complete picture. In my dojo, we call that kanzen, which means like completeness. right? You can't just say, well, we don't do, we don't do kicks, or we don't do punches, or we don't do. You have to have a very complete combative toolbox.
Yeah.
Because on the street, who knows what you're going to need at that moment, and you need to be familiar with all of these tools in a way that's not kind of haphazard. They have to kind of seamlessly work together. I think this is very important for jujitsu to really be jujitsu, right?
Yes.
And then number two is that that first part of jujitsu, ju, right?
Yeah.
That you have to be flexible, adaptable, and you have to if you try to there's times to be hard and forceful. Don't get me wrong, but if I'm going to go force on force with a sumo wrestler head on, I'm not going to win.
No.
And so I have to have combative completeness, and I have to Ju has to kind of be the floorboard or undergird everything that I'm doing. How can I use this person's strength, size, anatomical weakness, psychology? How can I use all of this to overcome them? Like Tommy says, to rattle their brain or to rattle their balance. So in any case, hopefully that makes some sense.
Interesting. Absolutely interesting, man. So you run a full-time academy?
Yes.
I mean, like the UK, America, COVID hit really bad.
Amen.
Like the UK. It hit the judo and jiu-jitsu world really bad, because we had to sort of sit back and watch the kickboxers and karate guys do everything via Zoom. It's very, very difficult when you do a grappling arts to do stuff by Zoom. So what did you do during the pandemic?
It was a difficult time. It was very difficult.
Carry on, or
no. Well, we were shut down. We were shut down for about 12 weeks, which at the time seemed like the end of the world.
Yeah.
But I got to be honest with you. In the United States, every state kind of opened up. It wasn't one unified thing,
Yeah.
So in Florida, although it felt like the end of the world for us there for a time, we were actually one of the first ones allowed to reopen, albeit with some restrictions, so forth. So we had some people on the West Coast who, it's a year and a half later and they still hadn't opened up.
Wow.
And it was madness, to be honest. But we did some stuff on Zoom, as best we could. But the truth is, like you just said, like I tell people all the time,
it's very difficult.
Yeah, if you're going to learn how to swim, you need to get in the water.
Absolutely.
And if you're going to learn jujitsu, you need other bodies to work with.
You need to get on the mat, don't you? You need to get on the mat with another body, lock them up, throw them.
Yeah, that's right.
And
there's some things you can do, but it's a Band-Aid. At the end of the day, you need to get on the mats.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the future looking like for you then, George? Are there more books planned, or?
So the truth is, I've been asked that question a lot in the last 2 weeks, as another book coming. The honest answer is I don't have another book in the works, but I also am not saying it won't ever happen. It's certainly a possibility, although I don't have, a manuscript or something in the works at the moment. But I do enjoy writing. I enjoy history. I love every facet of it, from practicing on the mats to the history, writing about it, listening, hearing other conversations about it. So it's certainly a possibility, although there's no hard plan at this moment. Awesome,
man. I'm going to fire this one at you, and we'll bring it to a close.
Yeah.
Okay. If I said to you, I said, right, George, okay, I want two instructors of your choice to come onto my podcast from the United States of America, who are going to tell a very interesting story. Who would they be?
That's a good question. I would probably say actually one of my mentors. His name is Robert. First name Robert, last name Robert.
Yeah,
easy to remember. He's a very senior practitioner of our martial art.
Yeah,
an extraordinary martial artist, and he's been in the game a long time and has a very unique perspective on you know, the balance between kind of the moral code of a martial artist, but also making sure that that doesn't dilute the fighting effectiveness of our jujitsu.
Yeah.
Another name, strictly American. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I'll tell you why I want to ask this question. I've got a list. I've got a list of American instructors I wanna go and approach.
Yes.
I've spoke to some. I'm not going to mention his name. I'm just going to say Small Circle Jiu-Jitsu.
Yep. Yep.
That should be enough.
Yes. Yes.
One of the Gracies. I'm very close. One of the Gracies. So yeah,
I'll give you an American, and I'll give you a Canadian if you want.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, go on then. Yeah, no problem.
So another name, if you're open to kind of the BJJ Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu route, there's a gentleman by the name of Roy Dean.
Right. Okay.
Roy Dean is a very high-level practitioner, but a very high-level teacher.
Yeah.
But he also has black belts in judo from the Kodokan in Japan.
Okay.
He went there as an exchange student, and Japanese jiu-jitsu system and Aikido. So he has a very well-rounded perspective on different iterations of jiu-jitsu. Japanese, very combat-oriented, old school, sport-based judo.
Yeah.
And even the way he teaches BJJ has a very Japanese feel to it, bowing in, bowing out. So he's a unique character there.
I'll tell you, we talk about Canada. One of the I love to get in touch with him. His name's Tom Sharkey.
Okay.
He's a Canadian. He used to the Canadian SEALs, used to teach them.
Yeah.
Really tough guy. I did a seminar with him. It must have been around about 1994, 1995. I was quite young myself.
Yeah.
But what a seminar. That was in the UK in Manchester. In Manchester, he came over as a special guest. It was a Robert Clark seminar, and he had lots of special guest instructors, and he was one of them all the way from Canada. It was Professor Robert Clark's representative in Canada, I believe,
for the World Jiu-Jitsu Federation.
Yeah, man. But wow, what a seminar! And I just love to get in touch with him. Tom Sharkey. I know he's Canadian. He's from Canada. Yeah. I'll find him. Definitely.
There's a Canadian guy by the name of Canadian. His name is Kevin. I think it's pronounced Secours. It's Secours.
Yeah.
And he has some interesting. He does some Russian martial arts as well, but his base is a Japanese jiu-jitsu system, and again, not only a very good technician, but a very good teacher as well. You know, I've seen some of his stuff throughout the years, and I've always liked it.
Awesome. What's your favorite technique, George? Before we go, let's wrap this up. Favorite technique.
Favorite technique. The company answer would be the technique that's right at that time. But you know, I'm a big Tayotoshi guy. Body drop throw.
Body drop. Oh man. Yeah.
Love that technique.
Yeah, I do. It's one of my. I like the body drop. Anything where I'm sweeping the legs as well, like sweeping loin. Yeah. Things like all our jiu-jitsu was translated in English.
Yes.
So the
quite familiar with
terminology is awful, man. It's awful.
Yeah. No, but I'm quite familiar. I have on my bookshelf a few of Master Clark's books, like syllabus books.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, I've always even some videos that you've posted, some old stuff.
Yeah.
Old VHS tapes. And I gotta tell you, he's his own unique man, and my teacher was his own unique man. Yeah. But man, if you blurt out the head sometimes. Yeah, I go, man, those guys move very similar, very, very similar.
Absolutely. There was just light years ahead, wasn't they? Guys like that. Light years ahead, honestly. Yeah. You can watch them all day. I love watching the old videos.
Amen.
You're watching the old videos, man. You see, I've seen demos, no mats. And if there are mats, they're just absolutely solid, rock hard.
Yeah.
And them guys trained, man. We got a lot to thank them for, as far as I'm concerned.
Couldn't agree more.
Bloody absolutely. But guys, I'm going to wrap this up. So George Rego from Florida, his book's out. It's been out a couple of weeks, guys. The founding of Jiu-Jitsu and Judo in America. I'm going to post the links. I'm going to do a book review on it. I will probably have George back again to talk about the book again, more detail. I just wanted to introduce everybody to George and bring George into the community, if you like, and build our bonds together. From and I think that's what jiu-jitsu is about. And you know when we talk about the great instructors of Professor Robert Clark, Soki Morris, all the guys was responsible for our jiu-jitsu today in America and here. We owe it to them, and that's what they would have wanted. So George Rego, thank you for coming on. I'm really looking forward to your book. We're gonna plug the book for you, so don't worry. We'll make it easy, successful. But George, how can people get hold of you? People watching this and they want to get in touch. How can people get hold of you, mate?
We're all over the place, man. So our main website is FloridaJukido.com, complete spelling Florida, JUKIDO.com. We're on YouTube at Jukido Academy. We got a pretty growing YouTube channel. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram at Jukido Jiu-Jitsu. So we're easy to get a hold of. And if anybody is interested, has any questions pertaining to anything about the book or otherwise, happy to help to the fullest extent possible.
That's awesome. George, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to talking to you guys again. Absolutely. So thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please share it as far as you can. Invite your friends and please help us let this podcast grow. So look out for all the news, guys. Thanks for all your support. George, take care, sir. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. You too.